and welcome back to Talk Ballroom with me, Jonathan Green, my partner in crime, Brendan White. Today we are going to discuss how to invest your time wisely when learning to ballroom dance. What are some ways we can do this, Brendan?
The first way is the so easy task of finding a good teacher.
Yes, very important.
There's many different teachers. There's many ways to find a good teacher that works for you. One of the first methods is finding the best dancer in the room, finding that beast, finding that badass, and learning under them.
Yeah, if you think they look cool when they dance, you want to emulate that person, and that's probably a good person to start with as your teacher. It's not to say that they'll be the best teacher in the room, but in general, when you're brand new to something, whether it be dance or anything, we would recommend getting as many different experiences as you can. So just sticking with one teacher is, even if you're going to be with that teacher in the long run of things, you should take time to experience other teachers as well, just to gain multiple perspectives and have a wider experience, making it easier for you to make your decisions on what it is you value in a teacher.
Finding different or taking lessons from different teachers could mean going to different studios or even just staying in the same studio. There's still a lot to learn from different teachers in the same place.
Yeah, and the good part about taking from teachers that are all trained in one area is that they're all focused on the same end goal, right? And hopefully even they're aware of the process you need to go through to get you there. Now, we all know that Brendan can explain to me something, and then I can look over at someone else completely confused, and that person can, what he's saying is, you know what I mean? We can have that, just one person, the way they describe it makes more sense to me than the way someone else does, but they should be leading up to the same goal, getting efficient growth in your dancing, and there is a clear path to doing that. Some instructors may have more experience and be able to call out that path or whatever you need right now to solve your problem quicker than others, but ultimately it all needs to be able to be understood. You need to know why you're doing what you're doing, what the benefits of doing it are, and if you're trying to do something they don't want you to do, they should be able to explain to you why you don't want to do that, what the negatives of that will be, and how it will negatively influence your progress.
That kind of leads also into another kind of teacher that you'd like to seek out. Someone who understands their information. Someone who's well versed in their information. They know what they're talking about. They can set up a clear and concise path for you and what you need to do to be successful. They can answer your questions, not just give you an answer, but actually go in depth and answer your questions when you need that full answer and perspective of how everything fits together. That's how I started working with Jonathan. So I started working at the studio because Jonathan would come teach our college or help teach our college club. And the way he knew his information and presented it was very meticulous, and he knew this stuff from front to back. And that's in my academics, I was the same way. And I was very interested in dance at the time, and that stuck with me of, well, he looks at dance the way I look at academics. He's going to look through everything, he's going to know his stuff, and he's going to give you his best answer when you ask a question. And I wanted to continue in that path as well. So that's how kind of Jonathan and I started working together, and now I'm here.
Yeah, thanks. That was a nice
ego boost
there. Yeah, a little ego boost there. But it is incredible how there are no dance police. Ballroom dancing is not the most popular thing in the world, so there's not a whole lot of brilliant minds on it, meaning it's hard to find a good teacher, and there's no one going around making sure that the teachers are teaching properly or learning the correct information. Lots of these teachers have just been left on their own to figure these things out, and so they come up with their own ways to solve problems. They're unaware of the big picture and how they're going to have to adjust their training as they get to this next level. And understanding why you do something is kind of the way you prevent that. I spent 7 years taking lessons, and I honestly look back, I don't know what I learned, but it took 7 years for me to find even just one teacher who presented the information as though it's systematic, as though we are doing this for this purpose, we're doing this for this purpose. When you're doing these things, you must do this. Like, there are rules. And not just rules for rules' sake, but rules for efficiency, to make you not just grow quicker, but look cooler, right? It all adds up to ultimately looking good and feeling good. But you should, it can be complicated getting those results. That doesn't mean you can't understand it, but it does mean that there's going to need to be a systematic approach so that you can retain all of the information that you're learning.
And sometimes the smartest or more comprehensive dancer in the room isn't going to be the best dancer in the room, and vice versa. As John said earlier, the best dancer might not be the best teacher, might not know his information quite as well as someone who does, but
for sure,
each has its own. Everyone has their own perks and pros and cons as them as an instructor.
And that's why we recommend to get multiple experiences, because you're absolutely right. Someone can look amazing, but then when they go to teach you, you can be like, I think he's talking a different language entirely. I don't know.
And along the lines of like those instructors who are very comprehensive with their information, even I myself would stick with an instructor even if they weren't the best dancer in the room, maybe even if the information wasn't always right, but it was so comprehensive and built, and they have such an understanding of what they know that give them the right information, and it will make everything work. Or they're looking for that new information, whether they're not there yet, but they're still working to find it. Or even similar, getting coaching. Having a teacher that's still progressing to get better. They might not be the best right now. They might still be working on it, but they're getting coaching. They're working on it.
Committed to growth.
Yeah, they're still growing. And then they will become that beast and that badass that you're looking for in an instructor. So instructors do that. They're just continuing to work. They're okay now, but they're working. They're continuing to get better. And those are also good teachers to find, especially as a new student, because you can take that journey along with them as well.
Yeah, I can see that being fun. It really also depends on what all you're wanting to do with your dancing, which in the beginning you don't have a clear idea of what it is you want to do with your dancing. You're just experiencing dance. But yeah, absolutely, because ballroom dancing isn't the most popular thing, you may live in an area where there is only one studio, or maybe not even a studio, just one like independent teacher that rents space out of different locations. Or maybe there's multiple. I don't know, you might not have a choice, but if you do have a choice, yeah, I would find the most knowledgeable, and second to that, I would find the person who's getting coaching consistently, who is on that path of pursuing a more advanced education. Because you'd be surprised. I mean, even if your goals are to just dance socially, for fun, with your lover, or even just you're wanting to meet new people, so you're looking for a social activity, even then, I mean, the process of learning doesn't change. What you do to get good at dancing is not different for this person than it is for me. Maybe the way I need to hear it is a little bit different, or the way I need to be treated, like the intensity or the patience or the speed in which we're pushing to get to accomplishing our goals. That can absolutely determine who you want to work with, their characteristics. But in terms of what you need to do to improve your dancing, there's not two solutions for one problem. Whatever problem you're running into, there is one most efficient solution to it. And an advanced teacher or a knowledgeable teacher is going to be able to give you that information more quickly. Which means whether you're social dancing, competing on a national level, experimenting with dancing, don't really know what it is, it's quite important to make sure that you have good instruction. It will make the whole process not just smoother, but more fun. And we're all here to have fun, right? Nothing is always fun, but we are on this earth to have fun. So, make sure you're looking for those different things. Be aware that just taking any instructor because you don't really care about being a top-level dancer doesn't make any sense. So get experiences, try multiple instructors, and make the decision based off of your awareness or your experience rather than some thought you have that you haven't really thought through. And if you do, you'd find out, well, that doesn't really make much sense.
So as well as finding good instruction, finding good instructors, another way that we can invest our time wisely is through practicing. Practice, practice, practice. We always hound on it. We will always know when you don't.
Like anything, right? Practice, practice, practice.
So, especially as we get into dancing, we tend to view practice as, hey, I want to carve out a large chunk of time so I can commit myself to dancing.
Mm-hmm.
And while we appreciate the enthusiasm, head's in the right place, we emphasize more interval training.
Like we talked about in the previous video. You won't be able to do an hour at first. You can only do little bits. But yeah, interval training is the way to go.
You can work up to an hour, but the goal is to start with little bits of time, doing it over the course of several times a day, being able to pick up and recall that information, put it down, go focus on something else and come back and be able to pick it up and put it down again. That's the goal. That's what we need to be doing. And that's how we're going to be able to build that. That's how we're going to build that mental endurance as well as the physical to be able to process the information, so we don't burn ourselves out when we try to carve a large chunk of time out all at once.
Yeah, it can be exhausting. And not only is it helpful for that, but it's actually the practice that you need. At first, you shouldn't be worried about training your body to do things. You should be worried about what it is you need to train your body to do. I mean, eventually we get to a level where we are focusing on training that's based around building muscle memory. But in the beginning, you need to go through that recalling process like you were talking about, just because, when you set it down and you return back to it, you force your brain to go through all of that work again to understand why I'm doing it, how to get in position, and your brain stays involved. Whereas if you carve out an hour, your brain still does that for the first 5 minutes. But then guess what it does for the next 55 minutes? It bows out, and your body's just over there repeating the actions. And in the beginning, that's not good, actually, because you're doing things differently. You might think you're repeating the action in the same way, but you aren't. And little movements, little errors are going to slip in there, and you won't notice, but you'll be pounding away, repeating it, and you actually will be building muscle memory, but it will be for the wrong thing. So in the beginning, it's very important to not worry about the muscle memory. Focus on the understanding and force your mind to really have to go through the process as often as possible. Interval training.
As intimidating as practice can seem about carving out time, think about just with your lesson. So if you have a 45-minute lesson, carve out an hour time. Get there 10, 15 minutes early and go through that information. Or after your lesson, take that 15 minutes. Work on that information that you just learned. Staying in the studio, just still working on it on your own, kind of cementing it. And then when you go home for another 2 minutes, 5 minutes, just going over it one more time. And even if that's the only practice you get that week, you will still see growth just from that.
Crazy.
Because you're doing the interval training. You're putting it down, you're picking it up, you're rehashing it, you're putting it down, you're picking it up again. Even if it's just a few minutes, even if it's just less than 20 minutes after your lesson, after the lesson and going home, being able to do that is you'll notice a difference if you do that for a few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, really, you carve out 15 minutes after your lesson to practice just so you go over all the information you went over in the lesson. So if your lesson is 45 minutes, just plan that your lesson is an hour and use the 15 minutes without your guide, without your instructor, for you to force yourself to go through the process. And that's really where you will force yourself to retain the information that you learn in a lesson, which is very important, not just because of the time spent, but the money spent as well. So 15 minutes after every lesson should help you solidify that information. And then, just like you said, when you get home, spend another 5 minutes. You will be surprised how much those two practices will change your dancing greatly. I mean, it's incredible. And then interval training becomes something you can do. Because otherwise, if you don't hit those two practices, if between learning the information and practice, the longer time that goes here, the less of that information you're going to remember. So you do the 15 minutes right afterwards to solidify as much of it as you can. You got that drive home, okay, some's going to leak out there. But then 5 minutes when you get home can possibly bring all that leaked out right back, and you can retain the information from there on. I mean, really, it's that will do so much for your dancing. And yes, show up 10 minutes early for the next lesson, just because it's not so much for the purpose of remembering the information. You should have already done that. That's probably for the purpose of getting it fresh right on the top of your mind, so when you jump into the lesson, you don't have to go through a lot of the stuff you've already went through, because you know what an instructor does if they see you make the same mistake. They go through the whole spiel again, and I gotta spend 10 minutes getting lectured about how I'm supposed to blah, 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 when I know I'm supposed to blah, blah, blah. I just didn't do the work. So 15 minutes after the lesson, 5 minutes when you get home, that's the work. As you get better, the interval training in between then and the next lesson,
Easy.
I mean, that's that. If you did all those things, you would grow quicker
So
than
fast.
Yeah,
Easy. Because the longer you let it go, the less more likes that information likes to disappear, and the less like you are to practice it. Either you're going to run into an issue and not practice past the point that we already worked to, or you're just not going to practice because you keep running into the same mistake.
and you're probably just not going to practice
That's
because you're going to be afraid of practicing wrong, or you couldn't remember it soon enough. You tried to spend 10 minutes practicing, but you spent the whole 10 minutes like, I'm not sure, I don't know what.
Yep.
So you want to avoid those scenarios, and that's how you do it.
And so we can tell you don't practice. So if you take a week because you didn't take the time to rehash that information, and you come back and we see the same issue that we just fixed last week at the end of the lesson that's still not working. Now I got to take 10, 15 minutes that we both have to hear the same spiel because I'm saying it.
It's time and money.
It's
effort too. I mean, it's energy.
If my students did that consistently, I'd be I'd almost a Christmas card.
But it's incredible how much can be done with just smart work, right? Didn't your dad ever tell you?
Work smarter, not harder.
There you go.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, we hope this information is helpful for you guys at home, and we will see you guys in a couple weeks here. Until then, Merry Christmas.
Happy New Year.
And keep on dancing.